This is not a story about Greenland, and it is not a story about ice. It is a story about belief, about the belief that has held the Western world together for more than 7 decades. While the world is focused on Ukraine, a quieter fracture is forming far to the north. When Donald Trump demanded control over Greenland, this was not a moment of spectacle. It was a test of how far the United States could push before its allies began to doubt the guarantees that define NATO. In Europe, the reaction was shock. In Moscow, it was calculation. Russia has waited decades for moments like this. Not explosions, not invasions, moments of hesitation. If you want to understand how power really shifts, stay with me. Because Greenland is not the issue, it is only the signal. And to decode that signal, we need to define the real problem. The real problem is credibility. For generations, Europe relied on a simple assumption that American power and American commitment were inseparable. This assumption built peace. It allowed Europe to disarm, to integrate, to prosper. But credibility is fragile. When a US president publicly pressures Denmark, a NATO ally, the damage is not legal, it is psychological. Alliances are not contracts. They are beliefs reinforced over time. Once belief weakens, every actor begins to recalculate. For Russia, this recalculation matters deeply, because NATO has never collapsed under attack. Its true vulnerability has always been doubt. Yet this story is not simple, because while Europe questions American reliability, Russia is not getting what it wants. No rapid deal on Ukraine, no imposed settlement on Kyiv, no normalization. This contradiction drives everything that follows. And to understand why, we need to look backward. Greenland's importance did not begin with Trump. During the Cold War, it was a shield, a place for early warning, nuclear deterrence. After the Cold War, attention faded. Ice returned. Then the world changed. Climate warming accelerated. Ice melted. Routes reopened. Suddenly, the Arctic was no longer peripheral. It became strategic. Shorter trade routes, access to resources, new military calculations. Greenland sits between North America and Europe, between oceans, between rival powers. The United States already operates a base there, but full control would mean something else. Not defense, dominance. This is the context Trump stepped into. And once he did, the system reacted. The first crisis arrived fast. Trump escalated his rhetoric. Tariffs were threatened. Force was mentioned. Europe responded with alarm. Denmark reinforced Greenland. Other European states followed. Because if Greenland could be coerced, so could anyone. In Moscow, this moment mattered, not because Russia planned it, but because it revealed something rare, a fracture created from inside the alliance. For decades, Russia tried pressure from the outside, energy leverage, military intimidation, political interference. None of it worked. But this crisis did something different. It planted doubt. Yet Russia stayed restrained, because even as NATO unity wavered, American power did not retreat. This was not collapse, it was instability. And instability is dangerous, because unresolved crises do not disappear, they deepen. And beneath this one, a hidden mechanism was already working. That mechanism is simple. When guarantees feel conditional, everyone hedges. Europe talks about autonomy, defense budgets rise, coordination slows, the United States gains leverage, but loses predictability. From Moscow's perspective, this creates opportunity, but also risk. A weaker NATO is useful, an unpredictable America is not. So Russia waits. No escalation, no celebration. This explains the Kremlin's muted response. Not passive, strategic. The goal is not to push. It is to let pressure accumulate. But accumulation never stays contained. Eventually, it spills. And that brings us to the second escalation. The second escalation did not come from Europe. It came from elsewhere, from places where Russia once felt secure. In the Middle East, American force reasserted itself. Russian partners weakened. Russian influence narrowed. Then pressure followed in Venezuela. At sea, signals were sent. This was not randomness. It was transaction. Trump applied pressure differently, depending on the arena. For Russia, expectations collapsed. There was no grand bargain, no relief, only uncertainty. This forced a recalculation. Trump was not aligned, not hostile. He was volatile. And volatility is dangerous because it dissolves rules. And when rules dissolve, people feel the impact first. This is where the story reaches you. Because uncertainty always has a cost. If Europe doubts protection, you feel it through spending cuts, through inflation, through insecurity. If war drags on without resolution, energy stays volatile. Markets hesitate. Jobs feel less secure. You may not follow geopolitics, but geopolitics follows you. Every delay, every hedge, every doubt. This is the human cost of strategic drift. If this feels familiar, you are not imagining it. And this is only the local impact. The global impact is larger. Across the world, the signal is clear. If NATO hesitates, everyone recalibrates. In Asia, allies watch closely. In the global south, neutrality grows. For China, this moment is instructive. Not to intervene, but to learn. Because power is learned behavior. If rules soften, alternatives rise. Trade becomes leverage. Resources become tools. Even the Arctic becomes symbolic. Not a battlefield, a message. Who sets rules? Who enforces them? Who waits? This is how miscalculation begins. Small moves, wrong assumptions, until systems slip, which brings us to the future. From here, three paths emerge. The first is stabilization. Trust partially restored. The United States reassures Europe. NATO adapts. Russia gains little, but avoids isolation. The second path is drift. No collapse, no repair, uncertainty becomes normal. The third path is fracture. Guarantees fail. Testing begins. History shows which path is most dangerous. Not the loud one, the quiet one. Because systems rarely collapse suddenly. They decay, and decay accelerates once belief fades. Which leads to the final question. This story does not end with Greenland. It ends with credibility. Power is not only force, it is belief. Right now, belief is strained. For Europe, this is a wake-up call. For Russia, an opportunity with limits. For the United States, a test of identity. What kind of power does it want to be? Systems fall not when enemies attack, but when guardians hesitate. If this analysis sharpened your understanding, stay with me. Share it. Because the next chapter will be written where belief finally breaks.